I had just wrapped up my quarterly presentation, a polished, data-rich breakdown of how we'd achieved the $50 million revenue milestone. The slide behind me proudly displayed a celebratory graphic, Q2 revenue surge, a record-breaking quarter. As I hovered my hand over the trackpad, ready to move to the next point, the new CIO, Damon Reeves, rose from his chair, adjusted his cufflinks, and cleared his throat with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Before we wrap up," Damon began, his voice steady but laced with something cold, "I have one final announcement." A ripple of unease swept across the room. Our leadership team sat in stunned silence. Some glanced at each other in confusion. A few, those who had been whispering in hallways and back rooms, avoided my gaze altogether. Damon strolled toward the front, hands clasped, exuding the polished confidence of someone who thought they had it all figured out. He stopped, surveyed the room, and with a practiced pause continued. "Effective immediately, Olivia will be stepping down as Chief Operating Officer. Her contributions have been meaningful, and we are sincerely grateful." A heavy, stunned quiet followed. My hand froze mid-motion on the trackpad, the slide still lingering on the screen. Damon's voice sliced through the tension. "As we enter an aggressive scaling phase, we need fewer bottlenecks in our operations, more agility, more risk-taking." His gaze flicked to me as if to underscore the message. "Olivia's strength has always been her methodical approach, but the pace we need right now is different. It's faster, leaner." The silence in the room wasn't shock. It was embarrassment, an unspoken, collective guilt. Damon let it linger before adding, almost as an afterthought, "I believe you mentioned just last week, Olivia, that we should focus on careful hiring and development before accelerating too fast. That mindset has its place, just not here, not now. Thank you for your service." He turned his attention to the room, as though the matter had been settled. I took a slow breath, steadying myself. This man, who had been with the company for less than 3 months, had the audacity to dismiss me like a footnote in his grand plan. I simply nodded, forcing a calm expression. "I appreciate the clarity," I said, my voice even. No protests, no tears, just a quiet resignation. Damon took over the projector, flipping to a slide titled Phase 2, Structural Optimization. I stepped aside, moving toward the door as though heading out for a quick break. They had no clue. None of them realized the moves I had already set in motion. 2 months earlier, when Damon had been appointed by the board, I had sensed the shift. He came from a background of fast-talking venture capital firms, where decisions were made over spreadsheets and egos rather than people. From day one, he treated me not as a partner, but as an obstacle to bulldoze. They'd all forgotten. I had founded the company's original product line 6 years ago. I built the team, drafted the operations manuals, and kept the ship afloat when our founding CEO stepped down due to health issues. I didn't ask for praise. I asked for loyalty. I received neither. Soon after Damon's arrival, I noticed the subtle changes. Meetings I wasn't invited to, strategies reversed without my input, whispers in corridors. And then, one afternoon, I overheard his assistant on speakerphone, arranging a lunch with our largest vendor, the vendor I had nurtured relationships with for 5 years. Damon's voice was crisp. "The plan is to phase Olivia out quietly. It'll be smoother that way. Smooth for him, perhaps. But I wasn't going to be erased without a fight." What Damon didn't know was that I had already seen the storm clouds gathering, and I had acted accordingly. Our largest vendor, Chronocore Systems, had been struggling. I had quietly reviewed their filings, spotted their financial vulnerabilities, and knew they were ripe for acquisition. So, I reached out to an old contact from grad school, a private equity partner based in Boston. Together, we orchestrated an acquisition through a holding company I had established the year before. Clean, legal, quiet. By the time Damon tried to push me out of vendor negotiations, he found himself politely redirected. Any further discussions would now go through the holding company's new leadership team. He never connected the dots. So, when Damon stood in that room, smiling as if he had just removed the final roadblock to his grand vision. I didn't flinch. While he was busy plotting my demise, I had been quietly acquiring the very foundation of his so-called Phase 2. Sure, here's Cure Part 2. Of the rewritten story with a 10 to 20% rephrasing for originality, while keeping the full-length structure and emotional flow. Back in my office, I moved with measured calmness. I gathered my things, family photo, the brass fountain pen my team had given me last Christmas, a well-worn copy of The Lean Startup, its margins filled with notes from late nights spent building this company. Every item was placed carefully into a box, like tokens from a chapter I had just closed. I turned toward the glass wall. Through it, I could see Damon laughing with the CFO, clearly pleased with his power play. I smiled again, this time softly, knowingly. What they didn't realize was that while they were basking in the glow of their victory, I had already reshaped the battlefield. By tomorrow, emails would start circulating, contracts would shift hands. And in just 3 days, panic would replace their smug confidence, because the heartbeat of their supply chain, Chronocore, wasn't just a vendor anymore. It was mine. And I was no longer the quiet partner they thought they could dismiss. Friday morning, an email from HR landed in my inbox. Subject, transition plan. Olivia, please complete the enclosed offboarding checklist by 5 p.m. today. We'll arrange for your severance package and benefits transfer accordingly. Additionally, Damon has requested that you draft a knowledge transfer document for your replacement. Best Camille, People Operations. I let out a quiet laugh, fired in front of my team, and now they wanted a favor, as if we were exchanging holiday cards. Still, I kept it professional. Camille, I'll ensure all deliverables are properly documented. Regards, Olivia. It wasn't just about professionalism. It was about control. Every file I handed over would be precise, clean, thorough, and yet just incomplete enough that they'd soon realize they couldn't navigate without me. And that vendor they thought they controlled, they hadn't connected the dots. Not yet. At 10:17 a.m., my attorney, Michelle, called. They're starting to sniff around, she said. A junior procurement manager from your old company reached out to Chronocore asking why they hadn't signed off on the updated delivery schedule. I grinned. And our response? We cited the recent acquisition, referred them to Verity Partners, and noted that future discussions would go through the new leadership team. They'll escalate by Monday, I predicted, once they realize how critical Chronocore is to the rollout of their next phase. Michelle chuckled. They never vetted the dependency. Now they're cornered. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the framed awards I hadn't packed yet, each a symbol of the operational excellence, strategic foresight, and cost savings I had delivered. They used to celebrate me. Until I became inconvenient. That evening, I met Clara at our usual spot, a quiet wine bar tucked away from the office noise. She slid into the booth, eyes wide with barely contained excitement. Everyone's talking about it, she whispered. Damon was smug all afternoon, but around 3 his mood shifted. Something spooked him. I stirred my drink slowly. Chronocore? She nodded. They were supposed to finalize next quarter's contract this week. The call got kicked back. Legal flagged an ownership change. Damon's been demanding answers ever since. I raised an eyebrow. So, he's finally catching up. Clara leaned in. He doesn't know, does he? That it's you? Not yet, I replied, my voice calm, deliberate. What am I going to do? Nothing. I've already done it. By Saturday, a meeting request popped up, this time from Trevor, the procurement lead. Hi, Olivia. I know things ended awkwardly, but I was hoping to connect about the Chronocore contract. There seems to be some internal confusion, and you're the only one who handled those negotiations. Could we have a quick call? I didn't respond. Not out of pettiness, but because it wasn't my problem anymore. Michelle, on behalf of Verity Partners LLC, sent a formal letter to TechLane's parent company stating that all future discussions regarding Chronocore services would be handled directly by Verity's new leadership. The new client relations lead? Me. By Sunday evening, my phone buzzed again. Unknown caller. Damon Reeves. 1 missed call, voicemail waiting. I didn't bother listening. Michelle's advice had been clear. Let your silence be the loudest thing in the room. She was right. Monday morning dawned like a storm at Techline. I sipped my coffee, watching from the sidelines. Through my vendor portal access, I could still glimpse their internal dashboards. In bright red, unconfirmed Q4 supplier contracts pending approval. That status would effectively freeze 3 major product lines. At 8:02 a.m., Clara texted. Damon stormed into the all hands. Nobody knows what's happening. He looks like he hasn't slept. By 10:30, LinkedIn buzzed with the press release. Chronocore Systems announces new ownership under Verity Partners LLC. The news rippled fast, tech blogs, financial sites, even a trending hashtag. Leadership matters. At 11:12 a.m., an email landed in my inbox from Damon. One line, "We need to talk urgently." I forwarded it to Michelle. 10 minutes later, she called, barely able to contain her amusement. He's panicking. He's finally realized who bought the kingdom he thought he ruled. And I wasn't done yet. Chronocore wasn't just a vendor. They were the very spine of Techline's data architecture, the heartbeat behind the AI-powered operations hub that Damon had staked his entire CEO reputation on. Without Chronocore's proprietary data libraries and custom infrastructure, that project wasn't just delayed, it was dead in the water. Back in my apartment, the familiar echo of footsteps drifted through the hallway. My office gear still sat by the door, boxed up, untouched. I hadn't decided if I'd unpack it or leave it behind. It didn't matter anymore. On paper, I no longer worked at Techline, but in practice, they worked for me. By Tuesday, the tremors were visible even without insider access. LinkedIn was buzzing. A project manager at Techline quietly updated her profile to open to work. 2 engineers from the AI division reposted the Chronocore acquisition announcement, each adding cryptic captions like, "Big shifts ahead," and "One door closes, another opens." But the real sign of the unraveling came with a calendar invite sent by Damon's assistant. Subject line, "Emergency Leadership Meeting, 9 a.m. mandatory attendance." Clara texted me at 8:44 a.m. He's sweating, literally. We all saw him walk in. Looks like someone just handed him a resignation letter written in blood. I took a slow sip of my coffee, feeling the calm settle deep. This wasn't about revenge. It was about proving a point that Damon hadn't just made a tactical error. He'd made a strategic blunder by dismissing the woman who had built the very foundation he now depended on. That morning, Michelle and I finalized the updated licensing terms for Techline. It wasn't predatory, just expensive. Where once Chronocore had offered volume discounts, negotiated by me to foster growth, Techline would now face pay-as-you-go rates, with premiums layered on for data hosting, integration support, and, critically, exclusive access to the AI modules powering their next-gen ops hub. Michelle read the final terms aloud, a hint of satisfaction in her tone. Standard enterprise rates plus a 22% premium for custom dependencies, plus an exclusivity clause. Oh, and public acknowledgement of Chronocore's new ownership, of course. "Send it before lunch," I said, my voice steady. "Let's give them time to lose their appetites." That afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from Clara. "Olivia, the engineers figured it out. You bought Chronocore. It's flying through Slack. Damon is livid. He locked himself in with the DevOps team. Oh, and 2 directors just asked if you're hiring." I started typing a reply, then stopped. Better to let the silence stretch. Let the uncertainty settle in. Let them wonder. Meanwhile, Michelle received a carefully worded reply from Techline's legal team, acknowledging our proposal, but not accepting. They were fishing for leverage, hoping we'd blink first. We didn't. Michelle sent a crisp, formal response. "As outlined in our proposal, these terms are non-negotiable, unless accompanied by a substantial equity stake or a public acquisition offer. We understand if Techline prefers to seek other vendors." But there were no other vendors. Chronocore wasn't just a piece of their puzzle. It was the puzzle. Replacing what we had built would take at least 18 months, and they didn't have that kind of time. That evening, as I walked through the glass-walled strategy lab at Verity's new headquarters, I watched my team mapping out roadmaps for incoming clients, many of whom had reached out after Techline's public stumble. It felt different, like the weight had shifted. My phone buzzed, unknown number voicemail. I pressed play. Olivia, it's Damon. Look, I think we need to start over. I'm not sure what your endgame is here, but you're putting a lot of people at risk. People who've supported you for years. Just think about that. You're better than this. The arrogance, wrapped in the thin veil of concern, made me shake my head. I had put people at risk? This was the same man who had fired me in front of my team, the same man who had gutted budgets, slashed onboarding programs, and then blamed me when senior developers started leaving in droves. No, Damon wasn't worried about the team. He was worried about the board. Clara confirmed it the next morning. He tried to frame the vendor situation as unexpected market volatility. The board didn't buy it. They're asking for a full audit of supplier dependencies. He deflected. Then they brought in external auditors. He's unraveling fast. At noon, my inbox chimed with a new message. Subject, immediate assistance requested. From Richard Alvarez, chairman of the board, Techline. Dr. Monroe, on behalf of the board of directors at Techline, I'd like to request a confidential meeting at your earliest availability. We are reviewing the current leadership's handling of strategic partnerships and understand you may have insights relevant to the board's assessment. Please let us know a convenient time to speak. I smiled. The game wasn't over, it was just beginning. I typed my reply carefully. Mr. Alvarez, I would be happy to make time later this week. Thursday or Friday morning would work well. Please let me know what suits your schedule. Respectfully, Olivia Monroe, Managing Partner, Verity Partners. As I hit send, I glanced at the framed quote on my shelf, an old gift from an engineer I once mentored. Be the kind of leader your future self won't have to apologize for. I had no apologies left to make. Thursday morning arrived, crisp and cold. The air felt sharper, like the universe had taken a deep breath, waiting for something to unfold. I chose my outfit deliberately. A tailored navy pantsuit, clean lines, silver cufflinks, and the sapphire ring my grandmother left me. It was the kind of attire that whispered, I don't work for you, but you'll wish I did. At exactly 9 a.m., I stepped into the boardroom on the 32nd floor of Halberton Tower, where Techline's board had convened for their confidential off-site review. The receptionist greeted me with a warm smile. Dr. Monroe, they're expecting you. Inside, Richard Alvarez rose from his seat as I entered. Thank you for coming, Olivia. We appreciate you making the time. Of course, I replied, shaking his hand. The boardroom was a study in contrasts: sleek, dark wood, untouched coffee carafe, and a long, polished table that seemed to stretch on forever. Around it sat 6 board members, their faces carefully arranged in a spectrum of polite discomfort. They weren't sure how I'd arrive, angry, smug, vengeful. But I brought none of that. I brought calm. I understand you'd like some insight into the Chronocore situation? I began, my tone measured. Richard nodded. It's escalated beyond what we anticipated. I thought it might, I said quietly. Then, I placed a leather-bound folder on the table. Inside, you'll find a timeline of events: emails, correspondence, financial filings, all of which confirm that Chronocore was fully acquired by Verity Partners 3 weeks ago. We are now the exclusive provider of your AI systems architecture and hold the data modules that power over 60% of your next-gen rollout. Silence fell like a weight across the room. One board member, in a charcoal gray suit, leaned forward, his brow furrowed. Why didn't Damon raise this earlier? Perhaps, I answered, my voice steady. Because he didn't see it coming. That line landed hard. I watched the ripple travel across the table, shifted glances, the tightening of jaws, the subtle crossing of arms. Richard cleared his throat. He told us the vendor issue was internal politics. Chronocore was overstretched. I shook my head. Chronocore is more stable now than it has been in years. What's unstable is the assumption that cutting out key leadership is a viable growth strategy. I paused, letting the words settle. Then I added softly, sometimes the bottleneck isn't the one moving too slow. It's the one who doesn't realize what they're holding back. By that afternoon, back at Verity's office, I sat with my executive team to review the final licensing terms Techline was now being pressed to accept. Michelle, ever precise, tapped the document with a smirk. We're being generous. We even built in a 6-month grace period at their old pricing tier, just to soften the blow. They won't see it that way, I replied. But we're not here to punish them. We're here to protect what we've built and set a precedent for the future. Across the table, Eli, our CTO, pulled up the latest client inquiry dashboard. 12 enterprise clients have reached out since the announcement, some of them direct competitors to Techline. I leaned forward, scanning the list. 2 names jumped out immediately, accounts I had once been told were impossible to secure. Now, they were coming to us, not because of glossy marketing decks, but because they finally understood the value we had always delivered. By Friday, the board at Techline had called an emergency executive session. Clara kept me informed with her usual precision. Word is Damon won't make it through the weekend. They've locked his calendar access. Legal's involved. And, fun side note, the DevOps team apparently copied you on the last documentation repo before you left. Audit trails are time-stamped. It proves you acted in good faith the entire time. He's unraveling. I stared at that word. Unraveling. It didn't spark satisfaction. It sparked closure. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about watching Damon's empire crumble. It was about recognition. About proving that when you tell a woman she's in the way after 6 years of building, mentoring, and leading, she might just show you exactly how wrong you were. That evening, just before I powered down for the weekend, my inbox chimed with a new message. Subject: formal response to licensing proposal. From Richard Alvarez. Dr. Monroe, the board has reviewed the proposal from Verity Partners. We are prepared to accept the terms as outlined, including the updated pricing model, public acknowledgement of new ownership, and the 6-month transition clause. We also wish to extend our apologies for the manner in which your departure was handled. We understand this does not erase the past, but we hope it opens the door to a more respectful professional relationship moving forward. Thank you for your time and for reminding us what true leadership looks like. I read it once, twice, then once more, letting the words sink in. I forwarded it to Michelle. Her response came back almost instantly. That's about as close to a corporate confession as you're ever going to get. I leaned back in my chair, gazing out at the city skyline. The lights shimmered in the night, the hum of ambition buzzing below. They were still chasing, still climbing. But me? I wasn't chasing anymore. I had already arrived. Monday morning dawned with an eerie calm, the kind that settles right before a storm tears through. I arrived at Verity's headquarters just before 8, coffee in hand, a quiet hum of purpose filling the air. As I opened my inbox, the floodgates burst. Overnight alerts, press inquiries, industry chatter. The headline was everywhere. Techline CEO ousted amid vendor crisis. Damon Reeves gone, effective immediately. I scanned the articles, each one quoting anonymous sources inside Techline, confirming that Damon's failure to assess critical supplier risks, coupled with the abrupt loss of Chronocore, had left multiple product lines vulnerable. His reputation? Shattered. Clara's text came through within the hour. It's real. Damon cleared out his desk at 7 a.m. No speech, no drama, just gone. Richard Donovan is the interim CEO. Oh, and by the way, they're scrubbing the AI Ops Hub branding. People are calling it the Ghost Project now. She followed it up with a gif of someone dousing flames with a bucket of water. I let out a soft laugh, but not one of triumph. This wasn't about watching Damon crumble. It was about restoring balance. At 11 a.m., I walked into our product lab for a team debrief. The engineers were preparing technical rollouts for new enterprise clients, many of whom had reached out since the press storm broke. Eli pulled me aside, excitement bubbling under his usual calm. "You're not going to believe this," he said, gesturing toward the large monitor displaying a legal document. Techline's drafted public licensing agreement. They included your name, front and center. I blinked. You're joking. Not even a little. Eli grinned. Technology developed by Olivia Monroe, licensed exclusively through Verity Partners. It's there, official, undeniable. I stared at the words, my name, finally in black and white, in a place they couldn't erase. It felt like taking a deep breath after being underwater for too long. They never said it before, I whispered. Not when I built the system, not when it launched, not after the first 1,000,000 users. Eli nodded. Well, they're saying it now, loud and clear. By Tuesday, we held a private strategy session to review the flood of migration requests. 12 former Techline clients had asked to demo our architecture. 3 of them were accounts I'd once been told were impossible to secure. Out of reach, they said. And now, they were knocking. Not because of a shiny pitch deck, but because the work spoke for itself. That afternoon, a call came from someone I hadn't heard from in years, Illa Grant. She'd been one of the few senior women at Techline during my early days, sharp, empathetic, and ambitious. We'd worked side by side until she was quietly pushed out 2 years ago in another leadership shuffle. Olivia, she said, her voice warm but tinged with something deeper. I've been watching this unfold. You have no idea what it's done for the women still in tech, especially those of us over 40. I was quiet, unsure how to respond. You didn't just win, she continued, her voice gaining strength. You proved that patience and strategy aren't weaknesses, that you can outthink someone without stooping to their level. It's rare, and it's powerful. Her words lingered long after the call ended, humming in my chest. This was the impact I hadn't expected. It wasn't just about my comeback. It was about the message. You can fight back without becoming the villain. By Wednesday, Techline issued a formal announcement. Techline has reached a strategic agreement with Verity Partners for continued access to the Chronocore platform. We remain committed to operational excellence as we evolve under new leadership. Buried at the end was a single line, quiet but clear. We acknowledge the foundational work of former executive Olivia Monroe in building the operational systems that continue to shape the market. No embellishments, no adjectives, just facts. And that was enough. Meanwhile, at Verity, our marketing team finalized the keynote I'd been invited to deliver at the Global Technology Leadership Forum next month. The title? When the System Says You're Replaceable and You Prove Them Wrong. That evening, I found a handwritten note tucked into my mailbox. No return address, just a simple card. Inside, it read, "You've become the story I tell my daughter when she thinks she's not strong enough." No signature, no name, just that. I held the card to my chest, letting the weight of it settle. Not pride, not revenge, just clarity. This wasn't about what they tried to take from me. It was about what I had reclaimed. My name, my work, my worth. And I wasn't finished yet. 1 year after I carried that box of belongings out of Techline's glass tower, I stepped into Verity's headquarters, the morning sun casting a warm glow across the polished floors. There was no fanfare, no announcements, just the soft click of my heels on marble and the steady hum of a company I had helped rebuild from the ground up. As I made my way to my office, Eli waved me down from the strategy room. "Olivia, you'll want to see this." His grin hinted at something big. I followed him inside, where the analytics dashboard flickered on the wall, displaying live client data. The numbers were staggering. Client retention, 98%. New enterprise onboardings, 14 in the last quarter. Revenue growth, up 31% year over year. But it was the last figure that made me pause. Techline's projected market share loss, a 27% net migration to Verity infrastructure. 9 of their top 20 accounts, gone. They tried to play it down at first, Eli said, almost amused. But investors are asking questions now. And for once, they're getting real answers. I blinked, processing the weight of it all. Answers? Like how? Eli turned the screen, revealing a freshly posted statement on Techline's investor relations page. We acknowledge that strategic missteps, including the mishandling of key partnerships, contributed to the challenges we faced last year. We also recognize the foundational work of former executives, including Olivia Monroe, in building the operational systems that continue to shape the market. My name in print, public, undeniable. I leaned back, letting the moment settle over me like a quiet tide. Eli watched me carefully, then added, "It's not everything, but it's something." I didn't need credit, I murmured. I needed truth. That afternoon, I reviewed the latest legal reports. 3 more licensing agreements finalized. One of them was Techline's oldest partner, now fully transitioned to our system. Michelle sent me a brief message. "You know they're going to try to buy time, new branding, fresh leadership, PR campaigns. But the core problem remains. They forgot the people who built their foundation. And you reminded them, without ever raising your voice." I didn't reply right away. I just stared at her words, letting them sink in, because that was it, wasn't it? All the careful strategy, the quiet moves, the times I held my composure when they expected me to break. This wasn't about ego. It was about showing that strength and grace weren't mutually exclusive. That evening, as I walked through Verity's halls, something new caught my eye. A framed plaque near the entryway. I hadn't approved it, but I recognized the quote immediately. "The true legacy of innovation isn't the product. It's the people who make it possible." Beneath it in smaller text was my name. I stood there for a long time, watching the lights reflect off the glass. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a message from Clara. "Just wanted you to know I officially start Monday. Thanks for keeping the door open. It feels like coming home." A slow smile spread across my face. Clara had been one of the last to leave Techline, loyal to a fault. Now she was ready to build something bigger, something better. "Welcome back," I replied. "There's so much more we're going to create together." That night, I dug out a small box from the back of my closet, the same one I had packed that final day at Techline. It held my old coffee mug, a farewell card from the team, and the pen they gave me when we hit $50 million in revenue. I studied each item, not with regret, but with clarity. Those years hadn't been wasted. They had shaped me, forged my resilience, sharpened my vision. They had made this moment possible. A year ago, they told me I was a bottleneck. They thought I was holding them back. What they never understood was that I wasn't blocking the company's growth. I was holding it together. And now I was building something even stronger, on my own terms, with the right people, and with my name exactly where it belonged. Not buried in footnotes, not hidden in someone else's speech, but front and center. Bold, permanent, exactly where it should be. Absolutely. Here's the final part of the rewritten story. Monday arrived, a soft, quiet hum settling over the city. One of those days that felt like a reset. I stepped into Verity's headquarters, coffee in hand, my team already buzzing with the kind of energy that signaled something big was in motion. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind, but this was a moment to pause and take in the view. As I settled into my office, my inbox pinged. A flood of updates poured in. Press clippings, internal reports, industry chatter. The headlines blazed across every platform. Techline CEO ousted amid supply chain crisis. Techline admits missteps, credits former exec Olivia Monroe for operational foundations. Leadership matters, trending after corporate shakeup. I clicked through the articles, scanning familiar names and quotes. Sources close to the board confirmed it. Damon's failure to assess critical vendor dependencies and the abrupt loss of Chronocore had triggered an irreversible chain reaction. Investors were restless. Product lines stalled. The board had accepted full responsibility and acknowledged the work I had done. Clara's message came in as if on cue. "It's real. Damon's out. Packed his things at 7 a.m. No speech, no goodbyes. They've even rebranded the AI Ops Hub. It's being called the Ghost Project now. And, oh, funny thing, someone just found the time-stamped audit trails. You were in the clear the whole time. He's unraveling." I stared at the word. Unraveling. Not out of spite, not out of triumph, just closure. This wasn't about watching Damon fall. It was about reminding everyone, especially the board, what happens when you dismiss the person holding the company together. That morning, Michelle and I finalized our licensing agreements. One by one, they came through. Techline's oldest partner fully migrated to Verity's platform. New clients reaching out, some even offering to pay a premium to fast-track onboarding. At 11 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was a message from the Techline board chair, Richard Alvarez. Dr. Monroe, on behalf of the board, we'd like to formally thank you for your patience and professionalism during this transition. Your leadership and foresight have been invaluable, and we look forward to maintaining a positive partnership as we rebuild. Please let us know if you'd be open to a conversation about future collaboration opportunities. I read it twice, then forwarded it to Michelle. Her response came quickly. That's about as close to an apology as you'll ever get from a boardroom. Well played. I smiled softly, a sense of steady satisfaction settling in. This wasn't about winning a battle, it was about building a future. Later that evening, I strolled through Verity's quiet halls, pausing by the framed plaque near the entrance. The true legacy of innovation isn't the product, it's the people who make it possible. My name was etched beneath it. I stood there taking it in, the reflection of the lights, the hum of quiet voices, the distant sound of keyboards clicking away. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Clara. Just wanted you to know I start Monday. Thank you for leaving the door open. It feels like coming home. Welcome back, I replied. We have so much more to build. At home that night, I pulled the small box from the back of my closet. It still held the remnants of my last day at Techline, the coffee mug, the farewell card from my team, the pen they gave me when we crossed the $50 million mark. I looked at each item, not with bitterness, but with clarity. Those years had shaped me. They had forged my patience, sharpened my vision, and prepared me for this moment. A year ago, they told me I was in the way, a bottleneck. They thought I was holding them back. What they didn't understand was this. I wasn't holding the company back. I was holding it together. And now, I was building something stronger, on my own terms, with the right people, and with my name exactly where it belonged. Not buried in the footnotes, not whispered in a boardroom, but front and center, clear, bold, permanent, exactly as it should be.